If your life feels like it's been written by someone else's hand, if the chapters of your days seem to unfold in patterns of pain, limitation, or mediocrity, then pause and listen closely. It may be because you have been reading and rereading a script you yourself have been speaking into existence for years without realizing it. Every word you have uttered, whether in jest or in anguish, has been a seed cast into the fertile soil of your subconscious mind. The harvest you live in today is the direct outgrowth of the seeds sown yesterday, last year, even decades ago. The startling truth, as Joseph Murphy taught with relentless clarity, is that you are not merely a character wandering through a pre-written drama. You are the playwright, the director, and the chief actor. The set changes only when the script changes, and the script changes only when the words do. The ancient writers of Scripture understood this with a depth that modern science is only beginning to glimpse. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, declares Proverbs 18:21, a statement not of poetic exaggeration, but of immutable spiritual law. This is not a suggestion that words are symbolic. It is a pronouncement that they are causative. And in the opening verses of Genesis, the very first activity of the divine is not the shaping of clay or the movement of stars, but the speaking of words. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Words, not merely ideas, not silent thoughts, but spoken commands, served as the bridge between the unmanifest and the manifest, between the unseen possibility and the tangible reality. Picture your life as a vast and intricate garden stretching beyond the horizon. Every statement you make about yourself, your health, your finances, your relationships is a seed tossed into that soil. Some seeds produce fragrant blossoms, nourishing fruits, and sturdy trees. Others send up choking weeds, thorny thickets, and poisonous growths. The garden does not argue with the gardener. The soil does not discriminate between flowers and weeds. It accepts whatever is planted, multiplies it in darkness, and returns it to you in form. This is the great shock for many, that their own lips have been the source of both their blessings and their curses, that the garden of their life is an exact reflection of the words they have consistently sown. Tonight, in this moment, we begin the work of rewriting that script, not with vague intentions or half-hearted wishes, but with deliberate, spiritually charged language that aligns with the eternal law Joseph Murphy called the law that heals and creates. It is a law as certain as gravity and as impartial as sunlight. It will work for you or against you, depending entirely on what you speak into it. If you will dare to believe that your words are magic, that they are infused with the same creative spirit that moved across the waters in the beginning, then from this night forward, each syllable can become a seed of restoration, of increase, of joy, of radiant health. And as we unfold this law, you will see that the distance between the world you have and the world you desire is as short as the next sentence you speak. There's a reason this law is often called forgotten, not because it ceased to operate, but because humanity, distracted by the noise of its own inventions and the mechanical hum of modern life, has stopped noticing its ceaseless work. In the ancient Hebrew world, the word debar meant both word and thing, a linguistic marriage revealing that to speak something was, in their understanding, to bring it into being. Words were not detached sounds that evaporated in the air. They were living entities, carriers of intention, shapes in the unseen realm that would, with time and nurturing, become visible in the outer world. Joseph Murphy drew a direct line from this ancient truth to the practical mechanics of the subconscious mind, explaining that every word, especially those repeated and emotionally charged, slips past the gatekeeper of reason and lodges in the fertile depths of the subconscious where it takes root. Once there, the subconscious, that faithful, tireless servant, accepts it without debate, without judgment, without considering whether the word is beneficial or harmful, and sets about organizing conditions, events, and even bodily functions to match the seed it has received. This is why a passing complaint about your health, repeated day after day, can silently script a story of decline, just as a consistent word of praise and expectation can begin to shift the trajectory of your life toward healing and renewal. You are already using this law every day, every hour. The question that burns with urgency is not whether you will use it, but whether you will use it consciously, lovingly, and in harmony with your highest good. The subconscious is like a great builder who works from the blueprints you hand him. If you give him plans full of cracks, rot, and instability, plans etched with words of defeat, lack, and fear, he will faithfully build you that very structure. If you give him plans radiant with order, beauty, and strength, words that declare life, abundance, and peace, he will just as faithfully build that. Murphy would remind us that awe should accompany this realization, not fear, for it means you are never at the mercy of outer events in the way you have been taught to believe. There is a law of words, an eternal ordinance of creation, and you are the authorized legislator of your own reality. The moment you speak, you legislate. The moment you affirm, you pass into law a decree that your subconscious will take as an order to be executed. Let the magnitude of that sink in. Every time you open your mouth, you are issuing a royal edict to the invisible court of your inner world, and that court will move heaven and earth to fulfill it. The tragedy is that most of us have been ruling our kingdoms with careless decrees, unaware that the chaos outside began with a whisper inside. But the beauty, the luminous, liberating beauty, is that the moment you awaken to this, you can begin speaking in a new tongue, not foreign in sound, but foreign in content, a language of blessing, of vision, of divine authority. And the law will obey it as faithfully as it obeyed the old. To understand why your words seem to carry such disproportionate weight in shaping your destiny, you must first see clearly the architecture of your own mind, the conscious and the subconscious, the two great chambers of the inner temple, each with its distinct role, each with its own strengths and limitations. The conscious mind, the one you are using to read these very words, is the realm of choice, analysis, reason, and deliberate thought. It is the watchman at the gate, deciding which impressions shall pass inward. Yet, despite its appearance of authority, it is limited in power, for it can only act upon what it already knows, and it tires easily, distracted by the constant flow of sensory input. The subconscious mind, on the other hand, is vast and tireless, the deep ocean beneath the surface waves, absorbing every impression, memory, and image, and tirelessly working to reproduce them in your outer life. It does not argue, it does not judge, it does not measure truth or falsehood. It accepts whatever is given to it with feeling and sets about making it real. Here is the startling part. Language is the primary tool by which the conscious mind communicates with the subconscious. Every word you speak, whether aloud or silently in the theater of your thoughts, is a signal sent down into those depths. Speak often enough of a condition, good or bad, and the subconscious will accept it as fact and begin to create circumstances, impulses, and even bodily changes to match. This is why sarcasm, self-deprecating humor, or habitual complaints are not harmless. To the subconscious, there is no joke, no metaphor, no, just kidding. Every repeated statement is taken at face value and recorded as a directive. Imagine the subconscious as a court stenographer who never misses a word and never erases a record. Each sentence you utter is inscribed in the official ledger of your inner world, and the law of your being will proceed to enforce it. Murphy often likened the subconscious to a faithful but unimaginative servant, one who executes orders without considering their wisdom. Tell it you are terrible with money, and it will diligently steer you into situations that confirm it. Tell it everything I touch prospers, and it will just as diligently arrange people, ideas, and opportunities to fulfill that command. The tragedy of unconscious living is that most people speak thousands of casual, careless words each day, never realizing they are scripting the very misfortunes they later lament. But the triumph of conscious living is that the moment you understand this dynamic, you can choose your words with the same precision and care as a master craftsman selects his tools, knowing that each phrase you speak is carving the contours of your future. And when you take up this craft with love, faith, and vision, you discover that the distance between where you are and where you long to be is bridged not by luck or sheer force of effort, but by the quiet, consistent, deliberate shaping of your inner speech. When Joseph Murphy spoke of words that heal, he was not referring to some vague inspirational poetry meant only to comfort the spirit in times of trial. He meant it literally, with the full weight of spiritual law behind it, that the uttered word, when clothed in belief and feeling, sets in motion the infinite healing presence within you, the same life force that knits the tissues of a wound without your conscious effort and renews the cells of your body in the mystery of sleep. He called this presence the inner physician, a divine intelligence embedded within your subconscious, forever alert to carry out the instructions you give it. Just as a doctor writes a prescription and the pharmacy fills it, your conscious mind writes the healing decree and your subconscious fills it with exactness using the raw material of life itself. The great error is that most people's nightly prescriptions are filled with fear, complaint, and the rehearsing of symptoms, and so the subconscious, loyal to the end, reproduces more of the same. Think of the countless times the words of Jesus in the Gospels were not elaborate rituals, but simple, direct commands. Be made whole. Take up your bed and walk. Stretch forth your hand. Each was a verbal seed planted in the receptive soil of another subconscious, charged with the authority of absolute faith, and immediately the body responded. Murphy would explain that these were not exceptions to natural law, but demonstrations of it, that when you speak with that same union of conviction and compassion, your own body will obey. A simple affirmation like, "Every cell is under divine order now," is not mere self-comfort. It is a signal, a vibrational blueprint handed to the subconscious, which then directs the complex symphony of cellular repair, hormone balance, and immune function in harmony with that command. This is why, when you decide to employ the law that heals, you must speak as one having authority, not pleading, not hoping, not bargaining, but declaring from the mountaintop of your inner knowing that the healing is already underway. You are not trying to convince a skeptical friend, you are instructing a devoted servant. In this sacred transaction, tone matters, feeling matters, persistence matters. Just as a gardener does not plant a seed one night and then dig it up in the morning to check if it has sprouted, you must resist the temptation to undo your healing words with counter-suggestions of doubt or fear. Speak the healing phrase, feel its truth, and leave it in the fertile darkness of the subconscious to work while you go about your day. Over time, you will see what countless others have witnessed: symptoms fading, strength returning, peace replacing anxiety, and you will understand that the only true medicine you have ever needed was the conscious use of your own creative speech directed in faith toward the life you desire. When we turn to the creative side of this law, we step into the realm where words do more than mend what is broken. They sculpt what has never yet been seen. Joseph Murphy would insist that the law of the word is just as active in the building of a future as it is in the mending of the present. And in truth, the two are inseparable, for every act of creation contains within it an act of healing, the restoration of wholeness to some part of your life. Words that create are words that carry within them the image of the fulfilled desire, expressed as if it were already fact, and received by the subconscious not as a possibility to be weighed, but as an instruction to be carried out. Murphy's formula for creative language is disarmingly simple. Keep it short. Keep it believable enough to bypass the conscious mind's resistance, and repeat it in the drowsy state when the gate to the subconscious swings open. In this way, you speak not to the intellect, which doubts, analyzes, and delays, but directly to the deep mind which acts. Imagine you are standing before a block of pristine marble, chisel in hand. Each word you speak is a strike of that chisel, shaping the formless into the form you hold in vision. Careless words gouge and scar. Precise, loving words bring forth beauty. When you say with quiet conviction, "My work is blessed and prospers richly," you are not making a vain boast. You are carving the contours of a prosperous reality. Say it in the stillness of early morning, or as you drift into sleep, and the subconscious will begin to arrange meetings, insights, and impulses that align with the prosperity you have declared. Murphy told of salesmen who, by affirming daily, "My sales are improving every day. I am advancing, progressing, and getting wealthier every day," found their numbers climbing and opportunities multiplying without struggle, as if unseen hands had cleared the path ahead of them. This is the chisel at work, not in frantic pounding, but in steady, deliberate strokes, each affirmation a cut that reveals more of the image hidden within the stone. The subconscious holds the blueprint for every possibility you can imagine, and your words are the tools by which that blueprint is brought into physical expression. It matters little whether you are shaping a career, a home, a relationship, or a state of inner peace. The process is the same, the law is the same, the power is the same. You speak the reality into the invisible, and the invisible arranges itself into the visible. The marvel and the challenge is that the law does not take days off. You are always chiseling, whether you mean to or not. Thus, your task is to speak only those words you would be willing to see stand before you in the flesh as the finished statue of your life's design. Before we can fully wield this creative law with precision and mastery, we must confront the shadow side of speech, the destructive patterns that run unchecked in the background of our days, etching deep grooves in the subconscious and programming it for outcomes we would never consciously choose. Joseph Murphy never flinched from pointing out that most people sabotage themselves not by deliberate malice, but by habitual carelessness with words. They rehearse failure in casual phrases, they pronounce defeat over their finances in moments of irritation, and they speak sickness over their bodies with the authority of a prophet, and then wonder why the harvest of their lives is thorny and bitter. Common phrases like, "I'm always broke," "I can't catch a break," "This is killing me," "I get sick every winter," slip past the conscious mind's filter because they are spoken without ceremony, in the easy flow of conversation. Yet the subconscious, ever faithful to its role, records each one as a command to be obeyed. Here the biblical warning lands with sobering force. By your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. This is not divine punishment in the sense of an external deity waiting to pounce upon each verbal misstep. It is the natural outworking of law, as impersonal and precise as the law of gravity. Speak words that align with life, health, and abundance, and you will find yourself justified. Your reality will bear witness to your declarations. Speak words that align with fear, decay, and lack, and you will find yourself condemned by the very conditions you have unknowingly decreed. The law is impartial. It will work with whatever material you give it, and if that material is toxic, the product will be too. The path forward is not to fall into guilt or self-reproach over past speech, for condemnation only doubles the error by planting more negative seed. Instead, you are called to awaken to listen to your own mouth as you would listen to the counsel of a friend, weighing each phrase before it is spoken, measuring it against the life you truly wish to live. This vigilance need not be grim. It can be a creative joy, a kind of verbal artistry, where every conversation becomes a canvas upon which you paint with words of blessing, strength, and possibility. And in time, as these life-giving phrases become habitual, you will notice that the weeds in your garden wither from neglect, starved of the reinforcement they once drew from your lips, and in their place rise the sturdy, flowering stalks of a new reality, one that was always waiting in potential, summoned into form by the careful, loving speech of a conscious creator. To truly believe in this law, to feel it in your bones as something more than poetic metaphor, you must witness it in operation, not as a vague spiritual principle floating in abstraction, but as a force that has brought tangible transformation in real lives. Joseph Murphy often filled his lectures and writings with stories, not to entertain, but to break through the walls of skepticism that surround so many minds, showing that what he taught was neither new nor theoretical, but demonstrable and repeatable. He would recount the tale of a business owner whose enterprise was stagnating, who felt hemmed in by declining sales and rising debts. This man began to apply the principle by speaking morning and night. I am divinely guided in all my business affairs. Every transaction is blessed, and prosperity flows to me in rivers of abundance. At first, nothing seemed to shift. The outer picture remained stubborn. But as weeks passed, unexpected opportunities emerged, old clients returned, and creative ideas surfaced with such clarity that the business not only recovered but expanded beyond its previous limits. Murphy would point out that the words had acted as seeds, and the subconscious had set to work, invisibly orchestrating circumstances until the spoken decree took form. Or he might tell of a woman bedridden with an illness that had baffled her physicians, her days heavy with pain and hopelessness. Guided by Murphy's teaching, she began to affirm gently in the moments before sleep and upon waking, "Every cell of my body is now filled with the life of God. I am whole, strong, and free." She spoke these words not as a desperate plea, but as a quiet statement of truth, seeing herself in her mind's eye walking in sunlight, smiling, breathing easily. Over time, her body responded to the inner blueprint she had consistently impressed upon it. Strength returned, symptoms faded, and her life resumed with a vibrancy she had not known in years. Even modern science lends a nod to these accounts through what it calls the placebo effect, a measurable, repeatable phenomenon in which belief alone, often triggered by verbal suggestion, produces real physiological changes. What the scientific world observes at a surface level, Murphy explained in full, the subconscious, given a clear, repeated instruction backed by emotion and belief, will marshal every resource to bring it to pass. These stories are not anomalies. They are the lawful results of a mind and tongue brought into harmony. And once you see this pattern, you can no longer dismiss the law as wishful thinking. You recognize it as the hidden architecture of every miracle you have ever heard of. And you understand that the same current runs through you, awaiting only the touch of your own deliberate, faith-filled word to surge into motion on your behalf. To grasp the mechanics of how words enter and shape the subconscious, we must step behind the curtain of conscious awareness and watch the process as Murphy himself described it, not in sterile, mechanical terms, but as a living exchange between the mind that chooses and the mind that executes. The subconscious, unlike the conscious intellect, does not debate, weigh probabilities, or demand proof. It accepts impressions, as a child accepts the voice of a trusted parent, with unguarded receptivity. This is why repeated statements, especially those delivered with emotional weight, are able to bypass the gatekeeper of reason and sink into the deeper strata of the mind. Every word you speak is more than a sound, it is a vibration, carrying with it an image and a feeling, and the subconscious responds to that feeling as the true content of the message. You could say, "I am healthy," in a flat, mechanical way 100 times with no effect, but say it once with genuine gratitude and a mental picture of vitality, and the impression will be etched deeply into the subconscious record. Murphy emphasized that the drowsy state, that twilight realm between wakefulness and sleep, is the open gate to the subconscious. In this state, the conscious mind relaxes its vigilant scrutiny, the critical faculty softens, and the subconscious becomes like rich, unguarded soil, ready to receive whatever seed you choose to plant. This is why affirmations spoken just before sleep or in the first moments of waking carry extraordinary power. The subconscious, still in a receptive, impressionable mode, takes the statement in without resistance and begins immediately to work toward its fulfillment, mobilizing your mental and physical resources and even arranging external circumstances to match the inner command. It is also in this receptive state that the sensory reinforcement of your own voice can have its greatest impact. Hearing yourself speak your desire aloud creates a loop of suggestion your ears take in your words. Your mind processes them as reality, and the emotional tone seals them into the deeper mind. When you add to this the resonance of belief, you are effectively programming the subconscious in the language it understands best, vivid, emotionally charged, repetitive instruction. And because the subconscious operates on the principle of growth and reproduction, it does not merely store these instructions, it acts on them, shaping your perceptions, guiding your choices, and aligning the threads of outer events to bring the spoken word into physical form. Understanding this process is not an invitation to superstition, but to responsibility. It means that every word you allow to pass your lips, especially in moments of emotional openness, is an act of creation whose effects will eventually meet you in the field of your lived experience. When Murphy spoke of the fusion between emotion and word, he was describing the alchemy that turns mere utterances into living decrees, charged with the power to compel the subconscious into action. Words by themselves, stripped of feeling, are like seeds left in a jar. They contain potential, but they will not sprout without the moisture and warmth of emotion. The subconscious does not respond to empty syllables. It responds to the vibration those syllables carry, and that vibration is determined by the feeling you wrap around them. This is why a single affirmation, spoken once with deep conviction, can have more effect than 1,000 muttered without belief. Emotion acts as the carrier wave that propels the word past the conscious mind's filters and delivers it into the fertile depths where creation takes place. Murphy often used metaphors to illustrate this truth, likening the combination of word and feeling to sealing wax impressed with a signet ring. The words form the design, the image of what you wish to create, but it is the heat of emotion that softens the wax so the imprint can be made. Without the heat, the seal cannot take hold. Without the seal, the heat has nothing to shape. When you speak with joy, gratitude, love, or unwavering faith, you are melting the resistance in your subconscious, allowing the image of your spoken desire to be imprinted without distortion. Even Scripture reflects this principle, for it is written in Galatians 5:6, "Faith works through love," indicating that belief becomes operative, dynamic, and creative only when infused with the high vibration of the heart's most expansive feelings. This is also why negative words spoken in anger or fear can cut so deeply into the subconscious fabric. The emotional charge behind them stamps the destructive image indelibly, sometimes requiring great persistence to overwrite. But the reverse is equally true. A healing word spoken with the warmth of compassion, a creative decree declared in the thrill of anticipation, can set in motion forces that will carry you further than effort alone ever could. When you grasp this, you begin to see your emotional state as the fuel in the engine of your creative speech. You learn to pause before speaking, to summon the feeling that matches your desired outcome, and to let your words ride on the current of that feeling into the receptive depths. Over time, this practice transforms your speech into a series of intentional, emotion-infused commands, and with it, transforms the landscape of your life into a mirror of the inner radiance from which those commands arose. When it comes to crafting healing phrases that the subconscious will accept and act upon, Murphy was both practical and precise. He knew that the mind, especially one accustomed to years of negative self-talk or fearful conditioning, would resist statements that felt too far removed from its current experience. For this reason, he advised using affirmations that were short, present tense, emotionally vivid, and framed in a way that the conscious mind could embrace without triggering inner arguments. A phrase like, "I am perfectly healthy," might provoke silent rebuttals if one is currently in pain, but "every day I grow stronger and more at ease" slips past resistance because it acknowledges a process already underway. The subconscious does not require exaggerated claims. It requires consistent, believable impressions that it can reproduce without friction. Murphy often recommended bridge affirmation statements that gently carry the mind from its present state toward the desired one. Instead of saying, "I have perfect vision," when one is wearing thick glasses, a person might affirm, "My eyes are relaxed and responding to the divine pattern of perfect sight." This avoids the conscious mind's tendency to scoff and reject the statement, while still planting a powerful seed of restoration. The key is to saturate the phrase with feeling, repeating it, especially in moments of drowsy receptivity, so that the subconscious can take it as an order rather than a suggestion. When such phrases are used consistently, they begin to displace the entrenched patterns of fear, complaint, or resignation that previously dominated the inner dialogue. Equally important is the rhythm and tone with which the affirmation is spoken. Murphy likened it to a lullaby, something gentle and melodic, spoken as if to comfort a child. The subconscious responds to this softness, for in that moment, the conscious mind relaxes its vigilance and the words flow inward, unchallenged. Imagine murmuring, "Every cell of my body is filled with light and life now," as you drift towards sleep, the words weaving into the fabric of your dreams, instructing the body's unseen intelligence to align with that image. Over days and weeks, these phrases, repeated with devotion, become the internal soundtrack of your being, gradually replacing the dissonant noise of old fears. And when that inner music is harmonious, the body follows the score, responding with renewed vitality, balance, and peace. In this way, the crafting of healing phrases becomes not just a mental exercise, but an art, the art of speaking to yourself in a language the soul cannot help but obey. Just as healing phrases can be shaped to restore the body and mind, creative phrases for prosperity can be fashioned to draw into your life the conditions, resources, and opportunities that express abundance in tangible form. Murphy taught that wealth is not an external object to be chased, but a state of consciousness to be cultivated, and words are the primary instruments by which that consciousness is formed. The subconscious mind responds to prosperity language in the same way it responds to healing language, with unhesitating obedience, provided the words are consistent, believable, and emotionally charged. A phrase such as, "I am prospered in all my ways," works not only because it is concise and affirmative, but because it declares a condition of ongoing flow, encompassing every area of life without limitation. It is not tied to one specific transaction or source. It speaks to the principle of prosperity itself, which the subconscious can then express through countless channels. Murphy often cautioned against language that carries the vibration of greed or desperation, for such words contaminate the seed of prosperity with fear-based energy. The subconscious, which takes emotional tone as seriously as the literal words, will mirror back not the prosperity you desire, but the insecurity you have woven into the statement. This is why affirmations like, "I attract money so I can help others live better," or "The riches of God flow to me freely, and I use them for good," are so powerful they align personal increase with the law of mutual benefit, creating a mental blueprint in harmony with the universal good. Prosperity that is rooted in service, generosity, and ethical desire finds the entire universe conspiring to sustain it, whereas prosperity sought only for selfish hoarding tends to decay, collapsing under the weight of its own fear. The crafting of creative phrases should also include sensory and emotional color, for this intensifies the subconscious impression. Saying "I live in financial freedom" can be amplified by imagining the feeling of ease as you pay your bills joyfully, the taste of a celebratory meal shared without worry, the warmth of knowing you can give freely without depleting yourself. These inner experiences, coupled with your chosen words, create a full-bodied message that the subconscious receives as a living reality to be matched in the outer world. Speak such phrases in the stillness of morning or the quiet before sleep, and let them echo in your thoughts throughout the day, not as wishful thinking, but as established truth. Over time, they will replace the language of lack that has perhaps run in the background of your mind for years, and you will find yourself meeting the physical equivalents of your declarations in ways that feel both natural and miraculous. In this way, you become not merely a speaker of words, but a conscious author of the abundant life those words summon into form. Among the many refinements Murphy offered to those serious about mastering the law of the word, the whisper method stands out for its disarming simplicity and its astonishing potency. This technique draws its strength from two converging principles. First, the heightened suggestibility of the subconscious mind in the moments before sleep, and second, the peculiar intimacy of the whisper, which carries with it a softness and directness that bypasses intellectual resistance. In the whisper method, you choose a single phrase, concise, affirmative, and emotionally resonant, and repeat it in a low, gentle tone, almost as if you are telling a cherished secret to a beloved child. The whisper is not meant to convince through volume or force. Rather, it slips beneath the surface of conscious awareness like a current moving silently under calm waters, delivering its message directly to the deep mind where creation begins. Murphy likened this to the lullaby sung to soothe the child into sleep, not because the words are complex, but because they are carried on a rhythm and tone that relaxes the body and quiets the conscious mind. As you whisper your chosen phrase, perhaps, "My life is unfolding in divine order," or "Every cell is made whole and perfect now," your breathing slows, your muscles loosen, and the doorway between the conscious and subconscious opens wide. In this state, each repetition is like a seed sinking effortlessly into rich soil, where it will germinate through the night. The method is especially effective because it capitalizes on the natural physiological shift into alpha and theta brainwave states before sleep, when the mind's defenses are at their weakest and its receptivity at its peak. Those who practice the whisper method consistently often report that their waking life begins to subtly reorient around the whispered decree. Ideas, opportunities, and coincidences begin to align with the inner pattern they have impressed night after night. It is not magic in the sense of circumventing the laws of nature. It is magic in the truest sense, the conscious use of natural laws to bring forth deliberate outcomes. The quiet repetition allows the statement to bypass the habitual chatter of doubt, planting itself in the subconscious as a given reality. Over days and weeks, this internal given exerts a magnetic pull on thoughts, behaviors, and circumstances, orchestrating them toward the fulfillment of the whispered truth. In practicing it, you come to realize that the most powerful commands to the subconscious are not shouted, but softly, steadily, lovingly spoken until they become the heartbeat of your inner world. There is a level of mastery where the spoken word does not stand alone, but merges seamlessly with the vivid inner picture, forming a double imprint on the subconscious that is stronger than either could achieve alone. Murphy called this the marriage of visualization and affirmation, the union of mental imagery and verbal decree, and he urged his students to cultivate it as a daily discipline. When you speak while simultaneously seeing in your mind's eye the result is already accomplished, you provide the subconscious with both the blueprint and the command to build it. Words carry the precise instruction, while visualization furnishes the detailed design, the color, the atmosphere, the emotional tone of the finished reality. The subconscious, receiving this integrated message, has no choice but to begin translating it into the outer world through every channel available. Imagine affirming, "I walk in radiant health," while picturing yourself striding down a sunlit path, your body strong and graceful, your breath deep and free, your heart light with joy. In that moment, you are not merely reciting words, you are embodying the reality they describe. The image supplies sensory data, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of birdsong in the air, the ease of movement in your limbs. The subconscious absorbs all of this as if it were happening now, because in truth it cannot distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a physical one. By pairing this imagery with a verbal declaration, you create a multisensory command that sinks deeper, faster, and more completely than either could alone. Murphy often illustrated this with the example of an architect and a foreman. The architect's words describe the intention, "Build me a house," but without the blueprints, the foreman has only a vague notion of what to construct. The visualization is the blueprint, showing dimensions, materials, and style. The words are the authority and instruction to act. When both are present, the subconscious, like a skilled foreman, can build with speed and precision. Over time, as you repeat this dual practice, the inner image gains clarity and power until it becomes so real to you that the outer manifestation is simply the natural next step. And when it appears, it will feel less like a sudden miracle and more like the inevitable unveiling of something you have already lived 100 times within. In this way, the merging of visualization and affirmation turns the law of the word from a simple tool into a master key, unlocking any door in the mansion of your potential. For those who are ready to cleanse and elevate their speech at the deepest level, Murphy proposed a practice both challenging and transformative, the 7-day word fast. It is deceptively simple in description. For 7 consecutive days, refrain from speaking any word of self-condemnation, complaint, limitation, or fear, whether about yourself, others, or your circumstances. At first glance, it may seem almost trivial, but anyone who attempts it quickly discovers how reflexive and ingrained negative speech can be, woven into casual conversation, humor, and even expressions of affection. The purpose of this fast is not mere silence. It is the deliberate replacement of destructive patterns with words that bless, heal, and create. Murphy's reasoning was clear. The subconscious is constantly listening, and even a single negative statement can act like a weed seed tossed into your mental garden. Over time, these seeds can overrun the flowers you have so carefully planted through affirmations and prayer. The 7-day word fast is a form of mental hygiene, an intentional pause to starve the weeds and give the flowers of constructive speech a chance to take root. During this period, each time you catch yourself about to say something critical, hopeless, or self-limiting, you consciously choose to reframe it into a positive form. I'm so unlucky becomes good things are finding me every day. I'm terrible with names becomes I'm improving my memory with every conversation. The emotional effect of this practice can be startling. As your language shifts, your inner state follows, and you begin to feel lighter, more expectant, more aligned with possibility. Relationships often improve because you are no longer feeding them with words that bruise or diminish. Opportunities may arise seemingly out of nowhere, a reflection of the subconscious now receiving only instructions that align with growth and well-being. Murphy emphasized that the power of this exercise lies in its intensity. A week of unwavering vigilance and replacement builds a momentum that can permanently alter your verbal habits. Once you experience the clarity and vitality that come from speaking only in harmony with your desired life, you will be reluctant to return to the old ways. The fast will have done more than cleanse your words. It will have re-educated your subconscious to expect blessings and to respond accordingly. If there is a single saboteur that can quietly undermine even the most carefully crafted affirmations, it is the hidden knot of unforgiveness. Murphy understood with penetrating clarity that no matter how noble or powerful your spoken words might be, if they are laced with resentment, bitterness, or a refusal to release past injuries, the subconscious will carry an inner contradiction that weakens the entire process. Unforgiveness acts like static on a radio line. You may be broadcasting your healing or prosperity statement, but the signal is distorted and the results arrive delayed or incomplete. This is because the subconscious, being the seat of feeling, cannot fully accept and reproduce words of blessing while simultaneously harboring feelings of hostility. Forgiveness, in Murphy's teaching, is not an act of condoning wrongdoing, but a necessary clearing of the mental and emotional field so that the seeds you plant with your words have room to grow. He often encouraged his readers to use affirmations specifically designed to release the past and align the heart with love. I freely forgive and bless all, and I am blessed. This statement, simple as it is, carries immense transformative power because it breaks the cycle of mental poison, the loop of injury and retaliation that keeps the subconscious bound to patterns of suffering. As you repeat such words, you are not only speaking to your conscious will, but instructing the deep mind to let go of the emotional charge attached to old memories, dissolving their power to shape your present and future. The theological foundation for this practice is as solid as its psychological one. Scripture urges, bless and do not curse, Romans 12:14, and warns of the spiritual consequences of withholding forgiveness. Murphy interpreted these not as moralistic edicts, but as descriptions of how the law of the mind operates. Cursing others, even in thought, is cursing yourself, for the image and emotion you hold about them must first pass through your own mind and imprint your own subconscious. By the same token, blessing others cleanses and uplifts your own inner state, aligning you with the very good you wish to experience. When you make forgiveness a spoken practice, not merely a private intention, but a verbal declaration, you are programming your subconscious to release the toxins of resentment and to expect the flow of peace, health, and abundance that follows. And in that purified state, your other words, those that heal and those that create, will find a clear, unobstructed channel into manifestation. In a world that often feels unpredictable and unsafe, Murphy taught that words could be used not only to heal and to create, but also to shield, forming a spiritual and mental atmosphere of protection that the subconscious would then translate into guided actions, intuitive warnings, and favorable circumstances. He referred to this as speaking a protective decree, a phrase so firmly rooted in faith that it becomes, in effect, an invisible fortress around the mind and body. This concept is not about superstition or magical thinking. It is about recognizing that the same subconscious processes which heal the body and attract prosperity can also be directed to keep you from harm by aligning you with safety, wisdom, and divine order. Murphy often turned to Psalm 91 for inspiration, noting how its language is rich with protective imagery. He shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. When these words are spoken aloud, slowly and with feeling, the subconscious accepts them as a living truth and begins to orchestrate events accordingly, causing you to take a different route, avoid a harmful encounter, or meet someone whose presence steers you toward safety. In his own work, Murphy distilled such principles into concise, affirmative statements that anyone could remember and repeat. Divine love surrounds me, enfolds me, and protects me. I am guided, guarded, and watched over in all my ways. These phrases, spoken daily, especially in moments of travel, decision, or vulnerability, set in motion a chain of inner and outer adjustments that fulfill their own content. The effect of such decrees is cumulative. At first, you may feel only a subtle, calm, or heightened alertness. But over time, you will notice that dangerous situations seem to pass you by, that you just happen to be elsewhere when trouble occurs, that you feel a quiet certainty when making choices that previously stirred anxiety. This is the subconscious following its orders, using both inner prompts and external channels to manifest the state of being you have declared. And because the subconscious is indifferent to the nature of the command, it is your responsibility to ensure that the protective words you speak are framed in faith, not fear. Saying, I am safe wherever I go, imprints confidence and invites conditions to match it. Saying, nothing bad will happen to me, still focuses on bad, and risks planting the very seed you wish to avoid. In this way, protection affirmations are not merely about avoiding harm, but about dwelling consciously in a mental atmosphere where only harmony, order, and right action can take root, an atmosphere sustained, as always, by the words you choose to speak. Words have the power not only to shape your personal health, finances, and safety, but also to transform the very fabric of your relationships. Murphy was adamant that what you speak about others, whether in praise or criticism, acts as a boomerang, returning to you in multiplied form. For the subconscious mind registers every statement you make and treats it as if it were about you. This is because the emotional energy you generate when speaking of another must first be experienced within yourself before it is projected outward. Thus, if you consistently speak ill of someone, rehearsing their flaws, predicting their failures, you are in effect planting those same seeds in your own subconscious, which will then manifest situations and feelings that mirror the negativity you've sown. Conversely, when you speak blessings over others, even those with whom you have tension, you are simultaneously bathing your own mind in the vibrational equivalent of those blessings. Murphy's guidance was to adopt the habit of pronouncing good over the lives of others, whether silently or aloud. For example, you might say, I see the light of God guiding and prospering them, or peace, health, and abundance are theirs now. The remarkable thing about such affirmations is that they often lead to tangible improvements in the relationship itself, as if the energy you projected draws forth the higher qualities in the other person. In many accounts, Murphy shared, fractured friendships healed, business partnerships flourished, and even long-standing enmities dissolved when one party quietly and faithfully spoke blessings instead of curses. The theological root of this teaching lies in the scriptural injunction to bless and do not curse, not merely as a moral duty, but as a practical safeguard for your own well-being. The subconscious takes your words as a command and applies them to the only field it can directly control: your own life. Therefore, speaking words of harmony about others is, in the most literal sense, an act of enlightened self-interest. By cultivating the reflex to affirm the best for those around you, you create an inner climate where resentment and envy cannot survive, and where love, respect, and cooperation grow naturally. Over time, this shift in speech will not only alter how you feel about others, but will also change how they respond to you, for people intuitively gravitate toward those whose words affirm their highest potential. In this way, your relationships become living testimonies to the law that heals and creates, proving that what you give through your words, you inevitably receive. As the day draws to a close, Murphy advised, there is a sacred opportunity to reset the mind, to clear the slate of any errant or destructive words spoken in the preceding hours, and to consciously plant the seeds you wish to see blossom in the days ahead. He called this the nightly reset ritual, and it was not a mere poetic suggestion, but a disciplined practice that could prevent the subconscious from carrying the debris of the day into the fertile hours of sleep. The premise is simple. Before drifting into unconsciousness, review your words, thoughts, and emotions from the day without judgment, simply observing where they aligned with your desired reality and where they fell short. Then, with deliberate intent, you speak affirmations that dissolve the impact of any harmful speech and reinforce the truths you wish to live by. Murphy often recommended a phrase such as, "Only God's words remain active in my mind. All else is dissolved in the light of truth." This is not an act of repression, but of conscious editing, choosing which impressions will remain active in the subconscious overnight. The mind, like a diligent gardener, will tend whatever seeds are left in its care. The nightly reset ensures that you do not leave it with weeds to nurture. After canceling the unwanted impressions, you follow immediately with constructive affirmations in the present tense, statements of health, abundance, peace, and harmony, so that these become the dominant vibrations carried into the deep, impressionable state of sleep. The power of this practice lies in its timing. Sleep is the season of the subconscious, the nightly period in which it works without interference from the conscious mind's doubts and distractions. Whatever you give it as it takes over the night shift becomes the pattern it will follow in directing the countless processes of your body and the subtle orchestration of events in your outer life. By ending the day with deliberate affirming words, you are in effect programming the night to work for you rather than against you. Over time, this ritual not only neutralizes the unintended damage of careless speech, but also accelerates the manifestation of your highest desires, because each morning you awaken with the subconscious already aligned to your goals. In this way, the nightly reset becomes not just a mental hygiene practice, but a profound act of spiritual authorship, ensuring that every new day begins from a place of clarity, intention, and creative power. If the nightly reset clears the soil before rest, then the morning creation ritual is the planting of fresh, vibrant seeds at the very moment the day's field lies open and untouched. Murphy taught that the first words you speak upon waking hold disproportionate power, for in those initial minutes your subconscious is still in a receptive, semi-drowsy state, and whatever you declare is impressed more deeply than at any other waking hour. Too many people, he observed, begin their day with words of complaint. "I'm so tired. I don't want to go to work. This is going to be a rough day," not realizing they are issuing the very orders that will shape the tone and events of the hours ahead. The morning creation ritual reverses this by making the conscious choice to speak only those words that align with the kind of day and, indeed, the kind of life you wish to experience. Murphy would often prescribe simple yet potent morning affirmations. "Today is a day of divine harmony and success. Everything I do prospers, and everyone I meet is blessed by my presence." Another might be, I am filled with vitality, love, and purpose, and I radiate these qualities into my world. Spoken slowly with feeling, while sitting up in bed or standing before a mirror, these declarations do more than lift your mood. They program your subconscious to expect, and therefore to create, the conditions they describe. The imagery you attach to these affirmations, picturing yourself moving confidently through the day, receiving good news, enjoying harmonious encounters, adds further depth to the impression, making it not merely a wish, but an experienced reality in the mind's eye. This ritual is not limited to personal well-being. It can be expanded to include affirmations for specific goals or projects. A business person might affirm, "My work is creative, productive, and richly rewarded," while a student could declare, "My mind is clear, focused, and receptive to all I need to learn today." The principle remains the same. The first words you speak set the tone for everything that follows, and your subconscious, still tender from the night's rest, will carry those words as marching orders into the day. Over weeks and months, the morning creation ritual becomes more than a practice. It becomes a natural reflex, an unshakable habit of directing the creative power of speech toward life's highest possibilities from the very first breath of each new dawn. In this way, you become not merely a passive participant in the unfolding of your day, but its deliberate author, shaping it with the same law that heals, creates, and blesses without fail. Murphy often reminded his audiences that the law of the word does not stop at the boundaries of one's own body or personal affairs. It extends to the very spaces we inhabit and the objects we use daily. Speaking to objects and environments is not an act of eccentricity, but an acknowledgement that the mind's influence extends into the unseen patterns of energy that precede physical conditions. He would point to the example of Jesus speaking directly to the fig tree or commanding the storm to be still, not as poetic flourishes, but as demonstrations of how directed speech can align outer conditions with inner intention. When you bless your home, your workplace, your car, your tools, you are not changing their physical composition by words alone, but you are impressing upon your subconscious the expectation that these things function harmoniously, serve their purpose well, and remain in good order, and the subconscious then organizes your actions, perceptions, and opportunities to make it so. This practice can be as simple as pausing at your front door each morning to affirm, "This home is filled with peace, love, and prosperity. All who enter are blessed." Or while sitting at your desk declaring, "This workspace is a center of productivity and creativity. Every task flows with ease." Even the objects you use can be charged with purpose. "This car carries me safely and smoothly to my destinations." Or, "This phone connects me only to good news and beneficial opportunities." At first, such statements may feel like quaint rituals, but with repetition they subtly shift your relationship to your environment. You begin to treat your surroundings with greater care, to notice and remove what is discordant, and to enhance what supports your well-being. Murphy emphasized that the subconscious thrives on consistency. By repeatedly blessing your spaces and tools, you are continuously reinforcing the idea that your environment is a partner in your success and harmony. Over time, this results not only in practical benefits, fewer breakdowns, more harmonious interactions in shared spaces, an increased sense of comfort, but also in a deepening awareness that your world is not separate from you, but an extension of your own consciousness. This awareness brings with it a profound sense of stewardship, for you realize that every word of blessing spoken into your surroundings is ultimately a blessing spoken into yourself. The environment becomes a living affirmation of your inner state, and in tending to it with your words, you are continually tending to the garden of your own soul. While the words we speak aloud have undeniable creative force, Murphy was quick to point out that our silent speech, the constant stream of thoughts, judgments, and self-descriptions that run beneath the surface, is equally powerful in shaping our reality. Public declarations may serve as the visible architecture of our lives, but it is the private monologue of the mind that acts as the hidden foundation, determining the stability and endurance of all that we build. This inner dialogue, though unheard by others, is heard with perfect clarity by the subconscious, which responds to it with the same fidelity it gives to spoken words. If your outward speech proclaims abundance, but your inward conversation murmurs fears of loss, the subconscious will take its cue from the inner voice, for it assumes that what you think in private is your truest conviction. Murphy likened the training of this silent speech to the discipline of a gardener who must not only plant flowers but also ensure that no weeds are allowed to grow unseen. This requires an alertness to your own thought patterns, catching yourself in moments of internal criticism, worry, or hopeless forecasting, and replacing those thoughts with affirmations that align with your desired reality. If you find yourself mentally rehearsing failure, you immediately pivot to envisioning success. If you catch the mind berating the body for its limitations, you replace the thought with gratitude for what it can do and a declaration of increasing vitality. This is not about suppressing negative thoughts with brute force, but about gently redirecting the current of your inner speech until it naturally flows in life-affirming directions. The power of private word practice lies in its constancy. While you may only speak aloud a few hundred sentences in a day, your inner voice is active almost every waking moment, and its cumulative influence on the subconscious is immense. By training this inner voice to speak as consistently in alignment with your goals as your outer voice does, you create a unified message that the subconscious can act on without conflict or hesitation. Over time, this alignment between public and private speech produces a remarkable sense of integrity and clarity, as though your entire being is moving in one direction. The outer results improve relationships, unexpected opportunities, greater peace of mind become not isolated manifestations, but the natural overflow of a mind whose every word, spoken or unspoken, is an affirmation of the life it is committed to creating. Even with the greatest vigilance, there will be times when a word slips past your lips that does not align with the life you intend, to create a careless complaint, a self-limiting remark, a declaration of defeat spoken in a moment of frustration. Murphy understood that perfection in speech is not the goal. Responsiveness is. The key is to correct such slip-ups immediately before they have a chance to take root in the subconscious. He recommended a simple but potent technique. As soon as you become aware of the misaligned statement, cancel it verbally by saying something like, "That is not my truth. My truth is," followed by an affirmative declaration that reflects your desired reality. In this way, you uproot the negative seed before it germinates and replace it with one that will yield a harvest you actually want. The speed of this correction matters, for the subconscious responds most strongly to the impressions that are repeated or left unchallenged. A negative word left to echo in the mind can begin to gather emotional reinforcement from your subsequent thoughts and feelings, making it more deeply embedded. By catching and replacing it immediately, you deny it the nourishment it needs to grow. For example, if you hear yourself saying, "I can't afford that," you might quickly follow with, "I am supplied with everything I need, and more is flowing to me now." This replacement not only neutralizes the original statement, but also turns the moment into a reaffirmation of your abundance consciousness. Murphy compared this process to steering a ship. A small deviation in course, if left uncorrected, can eventually lead you far from your destination, but a prompt adjustment keeps you aligned with your intended port. The practice of verbal correction builds a habit of mental agility. Instead of feeling guilt or frustration over a slip-up, you turn it into an opportunity to reinforce your mastery of the law. Over time, the need for such corrections diminishes as your default speech becomes increasingly consistent with your higher aims. But even at advanced stages, this technique remains a vital safeguard, ensuring that your words and therefore your life remain in steady harmony with the healing and creative power you have chosen to wield. While the spoken word of a single individual carries great creative power, Murphy often emphasized the multiplied effect that occurs when two or more people join together in agreement, speaking words of faith, healing, and creation with a shared intention. This he called the principle of group word power, a spiritual law as old as the human family itself and explicitly affirmed in the biblical promise, "Where two or more are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst of them." In such moments of united speech, the combined belief, emotion, and imagery of all participants form a collective mental blueprint far stronger than any solitary effort, and the subconscious minds of each person involved begin to work in concert toward the fulfillment of the shared decree. Murphy would describe scenes of small prayer circles, business teams, or even families who agreed to speak the same affirmation daily, aloud and in unison. A group might affirm, "We are guided by divine wisdom, prospered in all our ways, and living in harmony with one another." Spoken together, these words create a resonance that is felt almost physically, as though the vibrations of each voice weave into a single fabric of intention. The subconscious of each participant receives not only their own affirmation, but also the reinforcement of hearing it spoken by others with conviction, magnifying the impact. Over time, this shared mental and verbal alignment begins to shape group dynamics, attract cooperative opportunities, and dissolve interpersonal frictions that might have seemed immovable before. The applications of this principle are vast. A workplace can transform its culture by adopting a daily spoken statement of shared success. A couple can heal their relationship by affirming mutual love and understanding. A community can rally around a cause by declaring its fulfillment as a present reality. The theological root of group word power lies in the understanding that consciousness is not isolated, that we participate in a shared mental and spiritual field where aligned intentions strengthen one another. In practicing it, you become both a contributor to and a beneficiary of a larger stream of creative force, carried along by the faith and love of those who speak with you. Murphy insisted that this was not mere sentimentality, but an exact law of mind. Agreement amplifies creation, and when words are spoken in unity, the results will inevitably appear in ways that can only be described as multiplied blessings. There comes a moment in the journey of mastering the law of the word when you begin to see your life as a manuscript that you alone have the authority to revise, polish, and rewrite. Murphy often called this the stage of the life rewritten, a phase in which you are no longer dabbling in affirmations as an experiment, but have adopted them as the living language of your existence. In this state, your speech, both inner and outer, becomes a deliberate, ongoing act of authorship, with each sentence consciously chosen to align with the story you are now determined to tell. Gone are the accidental declarations of limitation or defeat. In their place is a steady stream of words that affirm health, abundance, harmony, and purpose as the only acceptable realities. To envision this transformation, Murphy encouraged his students to engage in a form of mental role casting, picturing themselves as the protagonist of a life where every spoken phrase carries the creative authority of a king or queen issuing decrees. You imagine yourself walking through your days as one who knows that the environment, the body, the relationships, and even the opportunities that appear before you are all responding to the instructions you have set in motion through speech. You learn to pause before speaking, as though you were about to etch something permanent into stone, and you ask yourself, do I want to live inside the world these words will build? If the answer is no, you rewrite them on the spot. If the answer is yes, you speak them with the full weight of belief, knowing they are already setting unseen processes into motion. In this rewritten life, the effects begin to compound. The people around you notice a shift in your presence. You speak with clarity, you exude calm authority, and you radiate an expectation of good that subtly influences their own language in your presence. The outer changes may begin modestly, a long-sought opportunity appears, a chronic tension in a relationship dissolves, but as the weeks and months pass, The scale of transformation expands until you can look back and hardly recognize the old life you once narrated with careless words. The theological beauty of this stage is that it mirrors the divine act of creation described in Scripture. God speaks, and it is so. In aligning your own speech with that same creative pattern, you step into the role for which you were always intended, a conscious co-creator with the infinite, rewriting your life into a work of beauty, power, and grace. As we arrive at the culmination of this teaching, Murphy would always bring his audience back to the essential simplicity and solemn responsibility of the law. Every word you speak is a seed, and every seed will, in its season, bear fruit. The final call is therefore both an invitation and a charge to become unwaveringly intentional about what you sow with your speech, and to do so with a full awareness that the harvest is inevitable. In this closing movement, the principle is no longer presented as an abstract idea or a hopeful experiment, but as a lived reality that has been proven again and again in the laboratory of your own experience. You have seen how words can heal the body, mend relationships, attract prosperity, protect from harm, and reframe the entire script of your life. Now you are invited to stand in the authority of that knowledge and speak as one who understands the power they wield. Murphy would often challenge his listeners to distill their intentions into a single, defining life sentence, a phrase so aligned with their deepest desires and highest values that it could serve as the cornerstone of their entire verbal practice. This sentence is not to be chosen lightly, for it becomes the central decree around which all other affirmations orbit. It might be as simple as, "I live in the constant flow of divine love, health, and abundance," or "Everything in my life works together for good, and I am at peace." Whatever the wording, it must be something you can speak daily with conviction, something that feels like truth the moment it passes your lips. In the spirit of this final affirmation, Murphy would often lead his audiences into an affirmation loop, a rhythmic sequence of declarations covering the core areas of life. I am whole in body, mind, and spirit. I am prospered in all my ways. I am surrounded by harmony and love. I live under divine protection and guidance. I give freely and I receive richly. Spoken aloud, perhaps even in unison with others, these statements become more than words. They become the vibrational signature of your life moving forward. As you continue this practice beyond this moment, the outer world will inevitably conform to this new inner pattern, for the law cannot do otherwise. And so the final charge is given. Speak only what you wish to see, affirm only what you are willing to live, and remember always that your words are not idle sounds, but the very substance from which your reality is made. The law that heals and creates is in your mouth. Use it wisely, and it will never fail you.